Hey everyone, I'm finally back to talk about my favorite games I played in 2023. This video may be 5 months late, but I have a valid excuse. Turns out earning a Bachelor of Science in Astrophysics is pretty time consuming. But now I'm back, and once again most of the games I played last year didn't actually release last year, but I certainly added many to my backlog. Starting off with this video, here's a couple honorable mentions. I started 2023 with playing a lot of NHL 22 with my friend Adam, and I even made a highlight video from one of our play sessions. That game is just dumb fun, and I'd be wrong not to include it here. I played the Teal Mask DLC for Pokemon Violet and thought it was decent, and I have yet to finish the Indigo disc. That's one of the higher priority items on my summer game list, but I'm anticipating it to be fun as per usual with Pokemon. I made a video about Hue last year because I thought it was a solid game that none of my friends had heard of. It's still a fun puzzle game that's greatly underrated and deserves some more love. And lastly, of course I've still been playing Destiny. From last year specifically, Lightfall was decent, Season of the Deep and Witch were fine, Season of the Witch was fantastic, Ghost of the Deep was great at first but has fallen off for me, Warlord's Ruin is fun, and the Return of Courtesan was glorious. Despite all of the controversies and claims of recycled content, Destiny is still peak gaming for me. I also had some other personal gaming highlights, including unlocking Dark Matter Ultra in Cold War multiplayer, completing World of Light on hard difficulty in Smash Bros. Ultimate, and finally getting around to finishing the Guardians of the Galaxy game, which was fantastic. It was on a best games list I had from a previous year, so I'm not including it this time. And thus, the honorable mentions have been mentioned, so now it's time for the real top 10. Everyone has those few games they remember playing as a kid. You can vividly recall specific parts of them and feel some immense nostalgia when coming back to them. For me, that game was Blinx the Time Sweeper for the original Xbox. I remember playing this game all the time as a kid, but I was pretty bad at it, so I never had beaten it. But now that I've gone back to finally beat it from start to finish, yeah, I can see why child me struggled to finish this game. The difficulty spikes are crazy, and some of the enemies and bosses are kind of bullshit. But man, when I hear the music for various levels in the overworld theme, it's an indescribable feeling. This game ranks in my top 10 for my favorite video game soundtracks of all time. These songs are honestly that perfect. Plus the gameplay is legitimately fun, with the careful planning of using time powers and the time limits for completing each mission. So yeah, this game slaps like the Russians and is on Game Pass, so you should all give it a try. I remember when Atomic Heart was first released, there was controversy about it being pro-Russian propaganda with its alternate history approach to the end of World War II. I can confidently say that's not at all how this game felt to me, and instead I just saw it as a fun single-player FPS. Atomic Heart felt reminiscent of Bioshock in a lot of ways, with the weapons, abilities, and the general vibes of a paradise that has gone to hell. But it does a lot to carve its own path into the shooter genre with its upgrade systems and game structure, some of which were really fun and others were a miss. I think this game is one where you need to play it for a bit to get hooked, as it took me around a month or two to finish the first 40%, but then I finished the rest in about a week. I'd give it a shot when it's on sale and after watching some reviews on it, but overall I had a good time with Atomic Heart. I did not expect to like Dishonored much when I started playing it, as I've never been a big fan of stealth games, but I followed my friend's recommendation with an open mind and ended up having a fun time with the game and its 3 DLCs. The dreary, plague-swept Victorian England setting fits perfectly for this type of game, and I couldn't imagine it working during any other time period. The gameplay and missions are also very open-ended and allow for an endless number of different approaches. There's so much flexibility in the encounter design that make additional playthroughs very tempting. Dishonored excels in making players feel powerful and unstoppable after starting with nothing but a short sword and a dream. I'm interested in checking out the sequel, which I've heard is even better than this first game. I have a lot more to say about Dishonored, and I'd like to make a video about it someday, but for now I'll say that it changed my opinion about stealth games, and I hope that the sequel maintains the same level of quality. Frogun is a goofy indie game that I bought on a whim because the trailer looked cool, and it ended up being one of the most enjoyable platformers I've played in recent years. The game is structured like a classic platformer, with a linear map of levels progressing between themed worlds with a boss at the end. But it adds so much more to that formula, with the titular Frogun tool that functions like a hookshot from the Zelda series, several collectibles in each mission, different outfits to unlock, actually interesting boss fights, and a bonus world with a really hard final boss rush. My main thought playing this game was that it was a cool idea, but the moveset felt limited, which thankfully is being fixed in the sequel game coming out later this year. I'm absolutely going to pick this up when it comes out, because its improvements to the core formula look fun while still being the same style of game. Admittedly, I finished Frogun in 2024, but I primarily played it in 2023, so it felt right to put it on this list. So yeah, if you're looking for a chill 3D platformer, you should check this game out. It's not too expensive, and I'd even consider playing it again sometime in the future. I have never been more conflicted with my opinion on a game than with The Legend of Zelda Tears of the Kingdom. On one hand, this game is massive with so much content and a very impressive physics system, It has one of the best Master Sword pulls in the series, allows for endless experimentation with its impressive sandbox, has one of the largest worlds with 3 different map screens, and is one of the best looking games on the Switch. The fact that this game even runs on such dated hardware is beyond comprehension. But on the other, much dirtier hand, they made one of the most disappointing games I've ever played. Reusing the same overworld made exploration less interesting than in Breath of the Wild. The dungeons are cool thematically but have a similar lack of depth to the Divine Beasts, except for the Water Temple, which is actually such a terrible dungeon with boring puzzles and a frustrating boss. Reusing many of the same armor sets was boring, most of the quests are still boring, the shrines are even worse and more brain dead than in Breath of the Wild, the new Sky and Depths regions were a great idea but still feel empty, many story elements were either boring or didn't feel impactful enough, and many more reasons. I still need to finish the final boss fight, but I don't see how it could change my opinion on the game as a whole. I would still like to see this game through to the end, but I don't ever see myself replaying it. I know so many people loved this game, and I can admit that it's just not the type of Zelda experience I'm looking for. That's why I have to put it on this list, but not at any higher of a placement. One of my favorite video game series has to be the Mario & Luigi RPG games. I've played, beaten, and enjoyed all 5 of them, and it's sad to see that the company making them no longer exists. However, I had previously only dabbled in the other Mario RPG games, and this year I made sure to change that. So I picked up the Super Mario RPG remake for the Switch and thought it was pretty solid. Playing through this game with my girlfriend made it much more fun, as we both knew little to nothing about the story or gameplay. The combat wasn't too complicated, but the variety of weapons used by each character, the different party member combinations, as well as the numerous enemies and bosses to fight kept it interesting from beginning to end. It felt cool finally getting to experience all these things that people have been fantasizing over for several years, like the iconography of Geno, Mallow, and other side characters like Boshi and Big Yoshi. Some of the new additions with this version of the game, like the boss rematches, were also genuinely challenging, though I still have yet to finish the Johnny and Coolix rematches. I'm really glad I got to play this game, and I'd even like to make a video about it someday. But for now, I can set my eyes on the Paper Mario series and play the real peak of Mario RPGs next. Kirby has always been one of the most reliable video game series for having a good time. The games may not be particularly difficult or life-changing, but you can always guarantee that they'll at least be enjoyable, and thankfully that was no different for Kirby and the Forgotten Land. In fact, this game was so good that I consider it to be a contender for one of, if not the best Kirby game. This game just feels so refreshing to play and really builds on the core formula from previous Kirby entries. The power-ups have basically remained the same, but now being able to upgrade them several times is a nice addition for something more to pursue. The boss fights are among the best in the series, this game is visually fantastic for the Switch, the world and level themes feel distinct from most platformers, and of course, the jump to 3D adds so much more depth to the gameplay. I wasn't immediately hooked by this game, but after reaching the 3rd world I could not put it down. It even has a post-game with more spoilery things that I won't say, but I can confirm it was well worth getting through. Nintendo really went crazy with Kirby and the Forgotten Land, and you'd be dumb not to play it for yourself. It had been several years since we got a brand new 2D Mario game, and Nintendo came back to hit a home run with Super Mario Wonder. The world themes are unique from other games, the new power-ups are all fun to use, the ability to choose any characters is a great addition, and the art style is gorgeous. This game wasn't perfect though, with legitimately some of the most boring and unimaginative boss fights in the Mario series. The badge system was also an interesting concept, but there was no incentive to use anything but the parachute badge, which I never took off excluding water levels. Having this additional hover made several parts of the game much easier, and only when it was taken away did I feel challenged, particularly in the final badge gauntlet, which I had to beat twice because I missed the top of the flagpole in my first run. But otherwise, I could not put this game down when I got it. It kept me going from the beginning until I saw all 6 medals on my save file, and it was very worth it. I finally got around to playing some PlayStation games this year, and one of those 2 titles ended up being Horizon Zero Dawn. This is one of those game series that always seem to fly under the radar when they release, which is a real shame because this game is fantastic. I loved the story and the gameplay so much that I spent extra time earning 100% in-game completion and unlocking the Platinum Trophy. Then I did the DLC and once again completed everything there too. The combat against each different type of mech enemy was initially rough, but after spending so long with the game, I was able to devise a strategy specific to each one to kill them quickly. I felt like a badass with my explosive tipped tear bow that ripped off several components at once from the largest enemies. All of the endgame equipment and upgrades were so broken that I felt unstoppable, which felt like I was being properly rewarded for mastering all aspects of the game. Those gold tier hunting ground trials with killing the 2 Thunderjaws in a short time limit and the other DLC trials with each type of bear machine had me sweating. Overall, Horizon Zero Dawn was amazing, and it's a shame that it remains as a somewhat underrated series. I'm very excited to eventually play Horizon Forbidden West once I have the time to. Lots of people always tell me to play certain games because they're so good and I'm missing out by not experiencing them. Sometimes these recommendations end up being overhyped or just aren't my cup of tea. But thankfully, Bloodborne truly lived up to the hype, and then some. It's not my favorite From Software game, but holy shit does this game go hard. The overall aesthetic is amazing, the fashion game is so good, the weapons all look sick, The combat is so fast paced and has a stiff learning curve to get accustomed with the quicker style of play. The number of side areas and optional bosses is kind of absurd, and the best boss fights are both amazing and memorable. Father Gascoigne, Martyr Ligarius, Shadow of Yharnam, Lady Maria, Ludwig, and of course Orphan of Kos. That being said, I generally have the same types of complaints as everyone else. Too many bosses that are just thrashing beasts, some of the areas are awful like the Forbidden Woods, grinding for blood vials is a pain in the ass, and too many of the bosses can be easily cheesed with parrying. I also got the Platinum Trophy for this game, which was both a lot of fun and a major pain in the ass with the Chalice dungeons. Bloodborne really needs a remaster or a 60 FPS update because it deserves the praise it receives. The only FromSoft games I have left on my backlog list to play are the Demon's Souls remake and Armored Core 6, both of which I own and am eager to get into. 2023 was a great year for gaming. So many amazing games dropped last year and I hardly had the time to play most of them. Into 2024, I'll be continuing to conquer my backlog and work on more review videos. This channel has had one upload since the start of the year, and although it's going to be a bit longer before another review video releases, rest assured I am slowly working on several at once. When the 15th review comes out, it shouldn't be as long of a wait until the following ones. I have a bunch of ideas for reviews, as well as some other videos like more gaming highlights or tier lists. Hopefully something comes out sooner than later, but we'll see how it goes. Thank you for watching, and I hope you've enjoyed the first third of 2024 so far.